Now on 4, Julian Clary introduces Out on Tuesday.
Hello and welcome to Out on Tuesday. While some of us choose not to take up the option of a bundle of joy springing from our loins, others do. After all, it only takes one little squirt to enrich your life with another little squirt. However, a bill now making its way through Parliament carries an amendment that lets doctors decide who gets access to donor insemination and who doesn't, on the basis of the child's welfare. Well, I wonder what that can mean. It means that we're not allowed to have children unless we're straight and married. But as tonight's first item shows, there are so many different ways of parenting, the nuclear family is pretty outdated. Wouldn't you say? I think he's just had a sticky moment.
We had the windows wide open and Mozart was blaring out on the tape, and it was all just totally idyllic.
You still get the feeling of it running down your legs, and I'll never forget that, I mean, ever.
I didn't sort of like go out and say I'd like to give my sperm to the world or something. It was very much that I was asked.
It was like taking a cup of tea in. I mean, sort of, you put this cup with a syringe in it and hand it over, and then I'd discreetly leave.
He'd done it like an hour previously, so you only had like a little bit of time left to get this thing out, and the top of the thing wouldn't open. We were there with a pair of scissors and a knife sort of thing, trying to get the top off this jar.
In political and repressive political times, which certainly seems to be the situation here in England, it certainly is the situation in the United States, the areas that get identified first as the need to maintain the old values is the old values of the family. And so lesbians creating families of our own becomes threatening to that sense of conservative control.
I think any government that legislates against lesbians, against women's fertility and the method by which it's achieved, quite frankly, is just pandering to prejudice, just pandering to bigotry and prejudice.
There are those who think, or perhaps don't think, that children and lesbians together can't make a family, that we create an extension of perversion. They think, or perhaps don't think, that we have different relationships with our children. That instead of getting up in the middle of the night for a 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. feeding, we rise up and chant, "You're going to be a dyke, you're going to be a dyke." That we feed our children lavender Similac, and by breathing our air, the children's genitals distort and they become hermaphrodites. They ask, what will you say to them? What will you teach them? Child that would be mine, I bring you my world and bid it be yours.
What we do as lesbians is we think about having a baby. We don't think about a quick fuck upstairs. It's not like a secondary thing to us.
Pocket full of clothes, a tissue, we all fall down. Down at the bottom of the deep blue sea, catching fishes for my tea. 1, 2, 3.
I'd had an idea for quite a long time that I actually wanted to have a baby, and for me, I didn't want to have an anonymous donor. I wanted to know who the donor was, and I was into the idea of having actual sort of positive male role models, and I didn't feel at all averse to having men involved with a child.
Both of us are very sure that we didn't want the biological father either to be aware that he was the biological father or to be involved in it. And ideally, we didn't actually ourselves want to know who the biological father was.
We wanted to have a donor who was not just a reflection of me and my cultural background, my English and Celtic background, but who also reflected my lover's background to some extent. And she's definitely not English, not Celtic. That's not, where her sort of heritage comes from. And this bloke just happened to fit the bill.
A woman came into life who was heterosexual, and her boyfriend was quite willing to do it, and they already had a family of their own. So he was just like the perfect person, really.
If somebody wanted to have children, or a lesbian wants to have children, then it would seem sort of like a reasonable way of showing some kind of solidarity in that situation. It doesn't cost you anything. Doesn't sort of like mean very much unless you yourself feel that you want to have children or to have some involvement in parenting, which I didn't really want to do.
I didn't really see it as donating sperm in a sense, because it seemed to me that if I was going to do that, then I would want some sort of involvement in the child. And part of it worked the other way around, that I wanted involvement with children, and therefore a really strong motivator for me would be actually having a biological connection with them. And sort of in that I've met women who also wanted a similar thing, or sort of like the basis was the same. It was a sort of a mutually agreeable arrangement.
Over the last 10 years, there seems to have been a shift from the original position that a lot of lesbians had about involvement of donors that they used. I think originally people felt that they didn't want donors involved with their children, and they wanted anonymity around the fathers of their children. And that position was clearly influenced by the whole history of lesbian custody cases, where women had lost children through custody wrangles with fathers, and that clearly influenced a lot of women of that time who wanted to have children independent of men. My lover had just lost custody of her first child to her ex-husband, and the custody proceedings have been extremely long and harrowing and a really dreadful experience. And knowing that absolutely everything we considered positive about our lives would be regarded really badly by the courts, that made us feel very, very clear that we didn't want any more men involved in our lives.
Lesbians knew at some gut level that if at some time in the future they were to get involved in a court custody case, if the donor was a straight man and the issue of her lesbian would come up, he would in all circumstances probably get custody of the child, because the assumption would be he's a straight man, he will remarry or marry, and he can raise this child in, quote, a normal, unquote, household. But so if the lesbian chose a gay man, that assumption is in some ways equalized, well, it would be wiped out, and they would have to then the courts would then have to deal with the fitness of either one of them as a parent.
You said to me something about you'd always wanted to have a child, and that was one of the things about being a gay man, was you never thought that you could have a child. Right. So we'd actually sort of talked about that, and I didn't say very much, and then I went away and thought about it, and I thought, well, it might be quite a good father, and talked to Kerry a bit about it. And then I just sort of, I didn't say straight away, oh, do you want to co-care with me, because it took a long time, and I didn't say really anything about what I was thinking for at least a year or so.
When lesbians who've donor inseminated come to see me, I'm very impressed by the degree of thought that they've given, not only the legal consequences of the donor insemination, but matters generally. The advice they seek from me very much depends on whether they've used a known donor or an anonymous donor, for example, through a clinic.
I see what we're doing as promoting a responsible option for women, a choice, that if they don't want casual sex, if they don't want self-insemination, they can come to a clinic and arrange conception, which will be safe, which will be anonymous, and where they will receive full and extensive counselling.
I went along, and they found all these things wrong with me. They said I wasn't ovulating, and my cycle went completely adrift. I mean, I'd been taking my temperature for months beforehand. But as soon as I started going to BPAS, my cycle changed. And in retrospect, it was the stress I was under. And of course, one of the things they say is if you're under stress, you're less likely to get pregnant.
Donor insemination is not a suitable method for every woman to use. The overall success rate is about 40%, higher with younger women, and it decreases quite rapidly after the age of 35. We also like women to be aware that frozen sperm is less potent than fresh sperm. Some women may be able to achieve conception with fresh sperm, for whom DI will not be suitable.
At the clinic, we were told that there was only one black donor at the time because they hadn't had the demand for it. But generally, in terms of the black lesbians I know, they have made other arrangements. I feel it has been slightly easier for white lesbians, just in terms of them being more white men that maybe are prepared to donate sperm.
In common with other clinics, PAS finds we have a chronic shortage of donors, and in particular of donors of Afro-Caribbean and Jewish origin. We have made repeated attempts to recruit from these groups, but it's very difficult because we don't provide a financial incentive for our donors, so they tend to, in the main, be medical students who are drawn from a very restricted group in society. Since the AIDS scare, however, we found for a start that one major source of donors, i.e. gay men, has dried up, if you like, and for a second that women are worried about screening for HIV and are worried about asking men they know to be tested in that way. So that was when we set up our service in 1986. There was an increased demand for the service. Now I think it's true to say that self-insemination networks are getting going again, that women are learning how to ensure their own safety, how to ask men to go and be screened, how often they should be screened, how often sperm should be tested.
When we finally decided we were ready, and we let him know, he backed out because he was not prepared at that stage in his life to go through an HIV test. And he also wasn't prepared to be a donor without having that assurance that he was clear.
I think it's only recent around the issue of having a HIV test that a clear decision had to be made, and I decided to opt out of it, partly because of my own feelings around having the test, and just lots of other things really. I just felt I just couldn't go through with it. I think it's a very major step, and before then I hadn't actually thought about the full implications of going through with it, and I just felt at that point that I wasn't actually prepared to do it. And so that put the onus on Kiri, but Kiri didn't actually mind so much, which was a really good thing for me.
I went for a 24-hour test. I had the test in the morning, and in between that and getting my results, it's like you have to think about your whole way of life and have I done in my time? And because they said to me, like, it can be dormant for up to 10 years, and that's my whole sexual life, really.
Because AIDS has so devastated the gay male community, there is a sense now of wanting to have something that's part of you continue to exist. Just as it's now more in the consciousness of lesbians to think of the fact that we can have children, it's also becoming more in the consciousness of gay men that why not? You know, I could have a child, and they have to figure out how to go about doing that.
Use your breathing to release before you carry on. Okay, should we do it the other way? Alright, elbows up and across. So first just hold it. Obviously a function of teaching antenatal classes is to provide a potential for women to get to know each other and to provide the potential for networks and support, and that has a really particular meaning in teaching a lesbian-only class. In a straight kind of group situation, a lot of the people who are teaching obviously have their own kind of heterosexist assumptions about the situation that the pregnant women are in. Most of them assume women are married, let alone heterosexual, so that any kind of lesbian experience is very invisible, and also the role of partners in particular is very undermined. Coming down there, so that's a breech birth.
I think the biggest issue that we have to face is one of us not being recognised as a biological mother. That's really, and that actually affects...
Non-biological mother.
Yeah, that actually affects our relationship because, you know, always somebody saying, oh yeah, but you're not the mother. She's the mother, or you're not the mother, she's the mother. You know, nobody can accept that the children have two mothers.
When Isaac was born, Katie was breastfeeding. And in some ways, that was quite difficult for me because there was the most fundamental thing I couldn't do and I couldn't help Katie with. And Isaac was ill, actually, and ended up in hospital, in special care. And he didn't continue with the breastfeeding because of his illness, which disappointed you. But in the end, that actually meant that we could share every aspect of it.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Pete. Happy birthday to you.
It's funny, the way that it works out is that, you know, one girl goes to, and one girl goes to me.
And the boy goes to both of us.
You know, it's just worked out that way.
One at a time. Some stones, I don't know if there are any stones. Although it would appear now like we both look after both the children, in actual fact, both times we've inseminated, it's been like independent decisions, not done together, and I think in a way that's very much affected our relationship with children, and I think actually made it a lot easier than if we'd set ourselves up with lots of heavy commitments to meet and made lots of promises and rules for each other.
You ready, Marco? Hold on.
Well done.
There you go.
We do, in some ways, have different roles with the children. With Christy especially, I do most of the mothering, most of the nappies and getting up in the night.
Oh, Dad, just makes me feel sick.
With Marco gets different things from both of us. I mean, she often has much quieter times with Lynn and will talk and sort of wilder times with me, but on the other hand, we still do the same things, Marco. We both look after her when she's ill, and I think we both fulfil her emotional needs.
It's alright. It's alright.
The advantages of lesbian parenthood are sometimes, I think, not so easy to see, are they? I mean, you get so much crap from outside. I think a big one for me has got to be that there's not a chance that the children will be sexually abused. There's the chance to grow up with someone who, against the odds, has made a choice about the way they live their life. And I think that makes all lesbians special in some sort of way.
People's perceptions of gay men around children means that they're always thinking, oh God, there's going to be some danger to the children in some way, they're going to molest them or whatever. Like, I'm thinking the other night when Liam had a cold, and about 5 o'clock in the morning he was sleeping in our house. So after 3 or 4 times of being disturbed, we decided the best thing to do, the most natural thing, was to place him in between us and just let him sleep. And it occurred to me on waking at about 7 in the morning that if something like the News of the World sort of burst in the door and took a photograph now, it would probably make front page material and be a real shock horror story. But in fact we were doing probably no more than I hope most other parents would do, just being natural, just reacting to what a child needs.
We did think about either of us being the donor for Anne, but when we talked it through, particularly I felt that perhaps the fact that it was either my child or Jeff's child could come between us.
I was very uncertain about the whole thing and how it was going to work. And I think in some ways found it quite threatening. But I just don't think, looking back, you can actually plan for that. I mean, a lot of the fears I had proved to be unfounded. And therefore a lot of the discussion we had, probably looking back, was discussion on theory, not discussion on what actually was going to happen once it started happening.
My mother and I couldn't communicate very well because of her deafness. And I have the same sort of deafness that she has. And I felt it was really important that Liam should always be able to communicate with me. So we've been teaching him sign language, or using sign language around him. Just like when he made his first sounds, he made like baby signs as well. So I hope that he'll grow up bilingual.
I'm quite lucky with my employer. My job's a solicitor, so I'm fortunate in that I have an income that allows me to think about part-time. Given the choice of earning more money or having time to parent with Liam, there's no choice. At work people will say, oh, did you enjoy your days off? And often people will not see that looking after an 18-month-old baby is actually hard work. You know, it's just not seen as work, which I suppose is why it's unpaid work and given a very low status. But it most certainly is, and I think perhaps the more that men were involved in that way with children, the more then the whole of attitudes would change.
Not here. Right. Tell you what. You sit here. No. There. Oh, you sat on a potato.
It's very much that you're on the go all the time, from the minute you get up. I mean, children, I think, if you look after them in the way that we do, which is that you give them choices, that you don't direct them to do things unless it's at the end of a really long day, that you say, ask them, and so therefore, if you ask, they have the right to say no, or stop, or hold it up. That inevitably leads to things taking longer, which inevitably leads to like more cleaning up. There's like washing, ironing, feeding them, shopping, playing with them,
because it's
picking up clothes. I mean, we spend
so much time on your hands and knees.
You know, on your hands and knees as well, picking up toys. Mummy, I've dropped this. Look for this.
We had to actually go along with their lives. They're the boss. We're just the minions that slave around after them.
The more of
that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah. The more of them than us, and they take up all the time, like, and talk about our relationship. I mean, we don't have time for each other, you know, like, and it's really hard to. The hardest part is you forget to see each other, you know, because you're so busy, like, You know, like, you never made up the bottles this time, it was your turn to make up the bottles, I made it last night, it's your turn to go in there, you know, or like, we just sort of get into bed and think, phew, you know, like, maybe get a little bit saucy or something, then all of a sudden somebody goes, you just think, oh no, and that's it, you just got to deal with it, you know, that's it, over, you know.
I don't think we go out as much as we did. I can't remember the last time I went out to a disco, and I mean, like, going to bed as well. I think going to bed, going to sleep. We go to bed now, like when Isaac goes to bed, so we've been going to bed at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, because he just gets up in the night so many times.
Céimid gabhar táiste hintin?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Sé gabhar?
No.
Cé tar siúla an cantin?
It was been his leg over the top.
She calls me Shan Lad, which is a bit of a joke on my part. Shan Lad just means old man in Irish, but she wanted to call me Daddy initially, and I said, no, I'm not your daddy. If you want to call me something, I was just trying to think of something appropriate, and I couldn't think of anything appropriate, so I said, just call me old man, Shan Lad, which is a kind of which is used affectionately anyway in Gaelic, you know. My old man, say in Ireland.
Do you remember when one of them bit Doc's leg? She's used to meeting an awful lot of people, and the sort of people she knows are people who like children and always treat her as an individual, I suppose. I suppose that perhaps that has to do with not being part of a nuclear family, I don't know. She's always known people who positively define themselves, lesbians or gay men, and I've never actually heard her use the word, you know, so-and-so's a lesbian or my mummy's a lesbian, but I'm sure she will.
Ailio lives in the house with me. She actually has a very independent relationship with him. I couldn't possibly imagine a scenario that she doesn't understand what's going on, like, you know, she knows that we're in love with each other and, you know, that we live together.
Getting well.
We've never had any kind of bitter acrimony about the amount of hours or days that we look after Alison. Like in the last year, I spent 3 months with her in Ireland, travelling around, visiting my family, which, you know, it's actually very important for me, and I think for her, like, we've got a very strong bond there with the rest of my family. Especially since, you know, I'm trying to bring up Gaelic speaking.
While I was pregnant, we thought a lot about whether I had a boy or a girl and how different it would be bringing up a boy. Because, I mean, we talked a lot about the issues involved in bringing up a girl with Marco, but, you know, I didn't have any idea what it'd be like bringing up a boy. I don't know very many men at all. And I really didn't want him to grow up feeling like he wanted to be a girl, like that was best, and I wanted him to feel good about being a boy and being a man.
This time I'm not telling you which way I'm coming in, so you've got to work it out. And watch the ball. Right? Yeah, that's it, keep moving. Oh, you're right. Oh, you're fine.
There's no big boys don't cry kind of thought in our family unit. Big boys do cry, and big boys who cry are probably going to be better off than big boys who keep it all in. From that point of view, I think Sam has healthier emotional options than many boys.
We take it in turns to do the washing up. Take it in turns to the bathroom, clean out the bathroom and the sink and the toilet. We jot around, putting things up on shelves and tidying up the rooms a bit. Yes! I love cooking, don't I? I love it. It's with that. My hobbies. Oh, right. My hobbies. Cooking. It has to be cooking, doesn't it? Baseball, basketball, and let me see. Making videos.
I think lesbians as mothers tend to be liberated from very harmful traditions. Sam, for instance, is not pressured into doing boy-type activities. Those are available to him. But it means that he can freely cook without anyone saying, this isn't a thing that you do. For girls as well, playing soccer is no big deal. In terms of life choices, that means that the basis that children of lesbian mothers have is a much broader one. It's one that's related to their desires and not to the outside world's desires.
Part of the goal, all right, because I'm coming in at an angle, that's it.
Firefly, firefly, there is my house beside that tree. Please fly down. The firefly lands beside the tree, and Umba jumps off her back. I've tried very hard to introduce him to books which give alternative ways of living, although it's not easy to find it. The now infamous book, Jenny Lives with Eric and Martin, is one such book that he's seen. But also I try and find books with maybe just one parent in it, incorporating all sorts of different things, sexuality, race, class, all the different things. I mean, there's a book that he likes where the father stays at home and looks after the child. And even though it's a man, you know, I think it is different because it's, you know, the mother is always portrayed as staying at home when the kids are, etc., etc. So, you know, I just try very hard and look around for books that I think, you know, will give him different views, really.
As lesbians, or even more so as feminists, we don't want our children growing up the same way that other children have grown up. We don't want boys growing up playing with guns or girls wearing the kind of frilly dresses that the court looks approvingly on. We want them to think of alternative ways and to know that there are alternative ways. And so if we can model in our families alternative ways of interacting, or alternative roles, not based on gender, I think we present a healthier picture for our children, and that's a strength that these children will have as they grow older.
I don't think donor insemination needs to be a massive issue. It's fairly matter of fact, and as long as it's explained to the child properly and clearly.
And honestly, I think honesty is really important. Being a parent is about what you do with the child after it's born, not what you're doing at the time of its conception. And it's about, you know, so I don't see the donors as the father, I see them as people who just... And I shall tell him that I thought the people that did it must have been, you know, they must have been all right people because they did this and they did it for nothing.
In my opinion, the most dangerous situation to have a child grow up in is one in which there's a lot of dishonesty around. I know myself from experience that a lot of children grow up in families where everything is supposed to be hunky-dory and, you know, wonderful, and aren't we this, you know, very respectable, nice family? And of course, the things that go on behind the scenes are just, you know, dreadful.
I grew up and it was very rigid, you know, like you had fish and chips every Thursday, and, you know, you watched Coronation Street Monday and Wednesday, and, like, you didn't talk to your mum because you don't, in my family you didn't, it wasn't done, and you certainly didn't talk to your dad, and it was like, you didn't go anywhere and you didn't mix with different people. It was like, it was very rigid, a really rigid lifestyle.
We wanted to offer our child a choice. That's why it's quite good for me personally that we're coming from very different backgrounds, very different cultures. And so I don't think I had many choices. I think the choices that I had to make. And they came very, very much later in life, and I think I lost out as a result of that to a large degree. So I'd like to offer my child choices from the very beginning, and hopefully make into a better person, who knows.
In the end, if Christian Marco chooses to be heterosexual, then A, it's a choice, which most of us never had, and B, that they know that heterosexuality is not a need, that they can cope without someone of the opposite sex in a relationship with them. That I think must be freeing.
Kate, go on. Get up, Marco.
We're not opposed to licensing per se. I think it's probably a good idea for private medicine to have to be publicly accountable in some way and have to match up to certain clinical standards. We are concerned, however, that any licensing restrictions should be used to raise standards and as a form of consumer protection.
It isn't the principle of lesbians getting pregnant, because no one on earth can stop them getting pregnant if they're fertile. But what it is, it's the way that it is actually done.
Lesbians were very much singled out as a specific group to raise the temperature of the debate, if you like, to get people really angry in a way that they wouldn't have been angry over just unmarried women. But single women have to be included because there's no way that you can, in law, restrict donor insemination to heterosexuals. As we know, there's no way you can tell a heterosexual woman from a lesbian looking at her. It's only workable if you restrict the service to married women only.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a way of imposing social control on women's fertility. This is a government that fetishises the nuclear family. We've got to remember that it's this government that introduced Section 28 of the Local Government Act, which brought into English law this bizarre concept of the pretend family unit. As far as this government's concerned, it's only heterosexuals who live in real families. Everyone else is just pretending.
If you want a child and you love a child, then that bond will grow. There's a lot of nonsense talked about blood is thicker than water. People will love and come close to each other.
I hope that they grow up and that they know they're worth something, that they believe as they do now that they're the best thing since sliced bread.
Not quite right on me, is it? I think when I take up the cloth, it'll be covered in sequins. Mind you, some of us do turn to the church for solace, succour, spectacle, or just a cheap supply of candles. Homosexuality is a big issue at the moment at the dear old C of E, who commissioned and then suppressed a report that recommended a tolerant attitude. Mind you, it's a long time since I sank to my knees in a confessional, or anywhere else for that matter.
I've always been proud. I have no illusions. In the 3 years I was at Cambridge, I only kissed a man once. By the river, actually, in the darkness. I couldn't see his face. It still dazzles me, the memory. The 3 years weren't wasted because there was this single moment of unbelievable happiness. Lord, you know, I don't expect more.
As London's National Theatre turns the crisis in the church into an award-winning drama, the real Archbishop of Canterbury races to retirement.
The next Archbishop of Canterbury will face an acute problem in relation to homosexuality. I think that the homosexual question will be the most sensitive that the present Archbishop's successor will have to face.
Gay rights have been an issue in the Church of England since the 50s, when many clergy urged the Wolfenden Committee to decriminalise male homosexuality. The contradictions between traditional theology and this new liberalism intensified into the 80s. Then, an evangelical vicar from Chelmsford led a fundamentalist backlash.
Back in 1983, I very nearly left the Church of England on conscience grounds because of the aberrations both in belief and in morals in the Church. But in the beginning of 1984, I experienced what I can only describe as a divine call to stay put within the Church of England, but to try and do something about these doctrinal and moral issues. All homosexual practice is an abomination and a perversion.
I went to the synod debate. I sat in the public gallery. I felt the sense of fear that was actually in that room at that time.
Higton's motion demanded the resignation of all sexually active gay clergy, a move which would have decimated vicarages in the inner cities. In a desperate attempt at compromise, the bishops came up with an amendment supporting compassion for lesbians and gays, but calling upon them to repent genital acts, which fall short of the ideal of marriage. The amended motion was passed by over 400 votes to 21.
I saw gay men, bishops, clergy, lay people, actually voting against themselves and agreeing, out of fear, I think, to just a motion that was condemning them.
The 1987 Synod vote had immediate impact on the lesbian and gay Christian movement, who were evicted by the church from their London premises.
They decided, only a matter of days after a debate on homosexuality in the General Synod, that the only place for us in the future would be off church premises.
Suddenly everyone was retreating back into the closet and were hiding again. And there were places where there had been witch hunts. I mean, for an example, the Diocese of Southwark, which is the whole of South London, recently they've made a decision, the bishops have made a decision, that they will not ordain anybody that openly says that they are a practicing gay person.
Now, a person is innocent till proved guilty, but I think the bishops have got to do their job, they've got to inquire, and if it's proved that a person is doing wrong, then they should be urged to repent, and if they blatantly continue in wrong action of whatever sort, including homosexual practice, in the end, whenever all else has failed, I think that discipline must be called for.
If all the gay clergy in the church left, the whole thing would collapse. There are parishes that only gay people are prepared really to go and work in.
What sort of parishes are they?
I suppose they're the less attractive ones, they're the inner city ones, they're the ones where people really don't want to take families, where people would really rather go to Guildford or somewhere really rather nice, rather than Hackney or East London.
It's fair to say that perhaps 35% of the clergy of the Church of England are either lesbian or gay.
Faced with a potential crisis of personnel as well as principle, the church hierarchy dithered.
I went to lunch with the Archbishop of Canterbury just before I resigned, and I'd wanted to talk to him man to man about sexuality, and I naively thought you could actually sit down and talk to somebody about this. And really he was tired, he hoped the issue would go away, he didn't really want to address it, and he said to me that bishops are going to say one thing in public and they're going to say a different thing in private, and I just got to accept that.
This February, the conflict between private tolerance and public posturing came to a head when the press printed leaked extracts from the long-delayed Osborne report on homosexuality.
I was really glad it was leaked. I think it was very important. And I mean, this sort of paternalism by which the church sits on things because it doesn't feel that the ordinary people are fit to read it, is a load of nonsense, really, isn't it?
I don't see the need for the Osborne report, so I'm happy that they've suppressed it. I think we've already settled the basic moral issue, and one of my main problems with the Osborne report is it says the issue hasn't been settled.
The Osborne report is a rather quaint document. It balances the Bible's condemnation of homosexuality with concern for isolated gay Christians. But it does offer clergy a way out of the closet if they live responsibly in settled partnerships.
It's a typical church thing. It's nice liberal heterosexuals saying, you know, you funny people, we don't think you're too bad, and if you like you can come and play and ape our neurotic sort of nuclear families if you want to. But I mean, it doesn't say anything really about what gays can offer to the church. I mean, I've learned more about forgiveness and acceptance from the gay community than I ever have in the church.
The Church of England, for ill or good, still has an influence in the country.
As the established religion of England, the church is part of government. The Queen opens its synod, the Prime Minister has a role in appointing its bishops, and they in turn make law in the House of Lords and officiate on state occasions.
No homosexual should lightly dismiss that influence if they want the quality of their own life to be enhanced and their own freedom to be protected. The Church could be a negative influence on the lives of all homosexuals.
Despised for being underground trash, condemned for corrupting youth. Am I talking about me? Am I talking about you? Of course not. I'm talking about comic strips. There are so many gay ones around now, it's certainly worth spending the odd hour immersed in a really good strip. Drive on, Robin.
Out! A new comic for mature readers only. Inside. Action!
Stop the claws!
Adventure!
Yes, I'm gay. What of it?
Thrills!
Chills. Don't you like women?
Spill. Please don't tell Mum. Oh, God. Please don't tell Mum.
Comics for capers.
Say, mister, do you have superpowers, or are you just gay?
Look, it's her. Oh, it's a woman.
Meanwhile, you want to use rubbers?
We've just met. I think it's a good idea.
I don't know. I'll just take my chances.
Listen, what's that noise? Sounds like trouble. Here he comes now.
Is it a heterosexual?
No, it's Lambda Man.
Oh, thank you, kind sir. Not everyone would save a drag queen in distress.
Comics for kisses. He is looking at me. I don't believe it. Oh my God, he's coming this way. He's sitting right next to me. Hello, my name's Eve. You come here often?
First time.
Several long pauses later.
Excuse me, I have to use the jar.
What did I say wrong? Is it me clothes? I wish I had a body. I guess he was too good for me.
He sure was cute. Wish I wasn't so shy. Well, I guess he was too good for me. Oh.
For heaven's sake, Morgan, pull yourself together and just tell her you like her. Meanwhile... Later? Don't be fooled by her hour-long speech on Central America. She's probably thinking the same thing you are.
Lust.
Back at your place, do be direct.
There's some lint here on your sweater.
Don't be afraid to make the first move.
Oops, ow.
Do ask her what she likes.
Rum raisin ice cream? No. Brown paper packages tied up in string.
Don't make comparisons.
Gosh, you sound just like my ex-lover.
But by all means, do make another date.
Tuesday? No, how about Thursday week? Maybe.
So? Oh, this must be the romantic interlude.
Mm-hmm.
pumpkin.
Happy anniversary, cuddly buns.
Comics over kicks.
I'm going to pee. I'll be right back. Excuse me, got a down pad on my nose. I'm off to the ladies' room.
Damn, she's been in there forever. How long can it take to piss? Jesus Christ, she always takes so long. Goddamn broads.
The action starts getting really wild, and cleverly arranged groupings see to it that no one gets left out and every possible area of stimulation is touched upon. Suddenly,
Clever initiation.
Holy shit.
not exactly Batman, is it?
Whoa. Oh, yeah.
Bill and Bruce take their bondage fantasy to new heights.
Boy, it's not easy living in an age where you have to be a good boy just when men have finally been accepted as sex objects.
What do you think, man?
Not bad.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that Eurovision time has come round again. In just under 1 week, this giant scoreboard will be flashing with the names of those European countries with the best and the worst records on lesbian and gay rights. I'll be there, so join me, Katie Boyle, next week for Eurovision on Tuesday. I wouldn't miss it for the world.